Have you ever heard anybody say that we have now exited a golden age of gaming, or that video games today just aren't as good as the ones they played while growing up as a kid? I think those are fairly common sentiments that many of you will have heard from, some friend or another over the last little while. And today I just wanted to talk about them and talk about the effects of time and nostalgia on the way we view and judge video games. I'm that compulsive gamer. Welcome to what is just a simple or it's not live, a simple commentary over some Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. Just kicking back, I wanted to talk about this topic for a bit as we get ready for Black Ops 3. So let me jump right into this. Games tend to leave more of an impression when you're young. I think this is why many people's favorite games are old. Nostalgia helps as well, but it also is the fact that we played these games when they were the peak of technology. When we saw NES and Super NES graphics, our first instinct and our first judgment wasn't, look at these shit graphics. It was, these graphics are unlike anything we've ever seen before. And although that does continue to happen to a sense today, that was true back then as well. I think it's the reason that if I asked you to close your eyes and picture a video game that you played as a kid, a video game you loved growing up, your picture in your mind would look a lot better than the game actually looks because your memory of it is tainted by the context in which the game came out, in the time that has since passed, and in probably the nostalgia and emotion you feel towards that game. There's nothing wrong with this, it's just the way we look at things and the way it works. I'm going to go back to Modern Warfare 3 for a second. Modern Warfare 3 for me was one of my favorite Call of Duties. Now the question is it objectively, technologically, one of the best Call of Duty games? I would say it probably isn't. It was one of the least innovative games I've ever seen hit the market. Didn't really change anything, had tons of nice big bugs that it took them forever to patch. The game was riddled with flaws, but it was a platform for my friends and I to game on. And Modern Warfare 3 is one of my favorite Call of Duty games, not because of the kill streaks or the guns, but because it was the platform that some of my best gaming memories happened on. I had a great group of friends back in grade 7 or 8 when Modern Warfare 3 had just came out, and we would spend a lot of time hammering away at survival modes and stuff. We'd spend tons of time together on multiplayer, honing custom classes and trying to pub stomp with our squeaky little voices over the microphone. We would spend a lot of time playing game battles, Major League Gaming stuff, tons of time in Sniper Wars on Dome, calling each other out for hard scoping. I remember these times, and they are great memories to me. And that really does influence the way I view Modern Warfare 3. It's one of my favorite games, not because it was a huge technological feat, or because it really innovated from the previous games, but because that was the time in my life where gaming was sort of something that all came together for me. We had games, we had enough free time, we had friends, and we really did form those bonds. We'd play on the game and then go to school the next day and talk about what we did, talk about what we accomplished, plan for the next game battle. And although it sounds really nerdy, and it totally is, this is the way it went down, and it's the way that I will ever and forever remember that video game. So there's my personal example. I'm sure you can think of one for yourself. Maybe you're older than I am, and it's a game from even further in the past that you grew up with, sitting on the floor playing split screen with your older brother. You probably have positive memories of that game, assuming your brother and you got along. And that's just the way it works. There's nothing wrong with that. It's simply a way that human emotion works. And it certainly has an impact on how we judge and remember video games. Here's another point I wanted to make, is that when we look at old games today, we only look at the gems. When we look back on games, we forget about all the shitty ones, and we remember the ones that defined a generation. We remember, the different Zelda games. We remember, Final Fantasy VII, all this kind of stuff that just came back in those days and really rung true to us in games that we had those memories and time played on. We don't remember the shit games, the ones that got a 34 on Metacritic and everybody gave the finger to and, chucked down their driveway. This is going to happen today. When we see a crappy game released today, let's look at Arkham Knight on PC, and we see that, look, it couldn't even run when it came out on PC. I know they just re-released it. Perhaps it's a bit better. It probably isn't. I'm, going to be a little bit of a cynic here. But we see everything that comes out today because we're living in the moment like we should. And we see those bad games that we won't, remember 15 years from now. And 15 years ago, when we look back on gaming, we'll remember Grand Theft Auto 5. We'll remember The Last of Us. We'll remember Uncharted. We'll remember, Halo Reach. Those are the fantastic games that will come to define the generation, just like what happens in every previous generation. We do this with music now. I love 80s music. I'll always say, oh yeah, the 80s were some of the best times when it came to music. But I also have to remember that the 80s songs that we hear today that still get playtime are the very good 80s songs, are the ones that, yes, defined that generation. We don't hear the millions of crappy, album songs that were pushed through with those famous singles. We don't hear, those terrible, terrible tracks that everybody lambasted and hated. We just hear the good. We hear a selective portion of what is available. Now, when it comes to music today, we see a news article in some shitty newspaper about Nicki Minaj's new, album, and we all go, oh, here we go again, look at all this crap. But is that really, what we're going to remember 20 years from now looking back? Probably not. So we have that sort of selective view of what we remember. And I think that's an important point to make. I mean, certainly, yeah, we might remember Nicki Minaj, but I sure hope she's not what defines our musical generation. There's also the idea in gaming that time heals all wounds, and this leads perfectly into that idea of video games were so much better then than they are now. Remember back to a time you had in gaming that was incredibly frustrating. A place in a game, a point in a game that you just couldn't get past. Maybe you wasted 20 hours nailing through this 5-minute segment of a mission, chucking your controller across the room every 5 minutes as you went. Now, those are probably somewhat funny. There are issues where I can just picture a situation where you have a game and you spend 20 hours trying to get through it, like I said. And, at the time, it was just a real piss off. Nowadays, you go back to your friend and you're like, do you remember that segment, on Rainbow Road on the first ever Mario Kart I played, where, we just couldn't get past it and we spent hours trying to get through it. And it's probably worth a good laugh. Now, you laugh at yourself, you laugh at the game, and you just go, oh man, what a bitch that section was. That's the way we're eventually going to look back on the issues we had with this game. Even like the Javelin glitch in Modern Warfare 2. At the time, that was really frustrating to play. Nowadays, I almost see it as funny that it lasted for as long as it did without getting patched. That's just the idea that time does heal all wounds. Now, the larger the issue, the bigger the problem, it will take longer for time to resolve it, and it'll take longer for it to be funny. That's one of the principles of stand-up comedy, right? Is that everything is funny eventually. And people will say that jokes are too soon, and perhaps sometimes they are. But if you were to say them again later on, I guarantee you that they would be funny to a different generation, and just to, you yourself in a different mindset down the road. There's also the effect of cynicism today. I think we've become a lot more cynical about the gaming industry. We have more information than ever before on backroom deals. Machinima got caught paying off YouTubers to advertise the Xbox One. Kind of a shady practice, knowing things like that I didn't know as a kid can certainly alter the way I look at developers, the way I look at the culture of game development as a whole, and all of that jazz. There's also that idea that when something is new, it brings a sense of wonder that really elevates a game. Seeing something better, but derivative, does not. That first time you play a game, it's a huge adventure, it's exploration. And while it's definitely possible for a newer game to become your favorite game, it's less likely, and I think that it needs that sense of wonder to do so. So as we become older, perhaps more jaded, Even if a game is the first of its kind, we don't see it as a unique experience. It's something that we've already played. You know, we've all played different first-person shooters with 10-minute multiplayer matches. We've probably all touched on different free roam, you know, open world RPG games, stuff like that. And we see it as like a mix of game A, B, and C rather than its own unique game. And that can make it harder to appreciate. So all in all, my point is that gaming is a difficult thing to judge. It's something that's very subjective, tainted by emotion and nostalgia. And while none of this is a bad thing, when it comes to throwing out games today and saying that the video game industry has never been worse, there are things that we need to keep in mind.